welcome to what is the first of, I hope, many, many podcasts about transformation and leadership. And so when I decided to embark upon this journey, I decided that I needed to start this journey with somebody that I admire, somebody that I looked up to, somebody that I consider a friend, and somebody I consider a transformational leader. And none other than Dr. Karrian Hepburn Malcolm. And so welcome, Dr. Malcolm. This is my first chance to call you that in an official capacity. So I'm really enjoying that. I'm sure. How has that been, that transition and now finally achieving your PhD?
It's been a surreal experience. The day when my professors, said to me, and we now welcome Dr. Karrian Hepburn Malcolm. Like the name, like it took a while to settle on me, it's definitely a good feeling when I think about the kind of work that was involved in getting that. So I'm just really grateful.
Wonderful, as you should be. So, the purpose of this podcast, in the last few years, I've been working on climate action and working on something that I've always been passionate about is women in leadership. And the two areas seem to have converged in that there's a lot of information now that suggests having more diverse leadership and more women in leadership leads to better climate outcomes, certainly at the country level. But there are a lot of folks as well who are collecting data that suggests that it also leads to better results from a company perspective. But one thing that's indisputable is that having more women in leadership of an organization yields to better shareholder results and better returns for that company. And so we need more women aspiring towards leadership. We need more women following in your path, and we need more women who are willing to go through not an easy journey. And I don't ever want to sugarcoat it to make people think that it's an easy journey, but it's something that's worthwhile, not just for them and their families, although it's really important that women aspire towards leadership for their own benefit, but also for the greater good. We are not utilizing the full talent that we have available to us. So it's really important that we get more women into leadership. And so with that, I will ask you to introduce yourself and your current role and what will soon be your new role.
Right. Okay. So you already said my name, Dr. Karrian Hepburn Malcolm. I'm currently the Vice President of Sales and Service at the Trinidad and Tobago Unit Trust Corporation, and I'm transitioning into my newly appointed role as Managing Director of the Guardian Media Group, or Guardian Media Limited.
I'm so excited for you. What a phenomenal role. And, it's not just that having a woman at the helm of Guardian Media is spectacular. The fact that you are, you have embraced this new country and been able to ascend to leadership. I think that speaks so much to the quality of your leadership and the mark that you've been able to make. One of the reasons that I decided to start with you on this journey is that last year, some friends and I were talking about how do we get more women appointed to boards. And so we started collecting this list of women who would be good stewards of governance at the board leadership level. And there was one woman who was recommended over and over and over that this woman is clearly the kind of woman who should be sitting on any number of boards. And I remember calling you and saying, listen, everybody I call, you're the first name they mention. And so, the leadership that you possess is clearly apparent to all of the people who experience you, who see you, who work with you. And I think that there's so much that we can learn from your kind of leadership. So when did you know that you wanted to be a leader?
That's a really good question, Racquel, because certainly early in my career, I didn't know that I wanted to be a leader. I had no aspiration to be a leader. I simply wanted to be more financially comfortable and stable, and to be able to provide for my family, which was predominantly my mother. So I went into, obviously, the world of work, and I threw myself in. I worked very hard. I worked long hours. And it was actually my leaders who saw something in me. So when I was 25 years old, I remember my CEO at the time, Peter Bunting. I was working at an investment bank there in Bunting and Golden, and they were going through a restructure. And he said to me, I think you're ready to be the head of private banking. And I was like, what, me? Like how? Like, because at 25, clearly I didn't have that much experience. And usually the team members on the private banking team are the more seasoned bankers, because you're dealing with high net worth individuals, individuals and companies with hundreds and thousands of US dollars or the equivalent. And so I couldn't understand what he saw in me or what my leaders saw in me, why they'd want to put me in that position. In the back of my mind, I also thought it was wicked. So I entered the role with a lot of intimidation and a lot of insecurity. And as a matter of fact, to connect the dots, that's why I did the doctorate. So I had a first degree, did the MBA, just to, give myself an edge in the working world. But when I got this leadership position, I thought to myself, certainly no client is going to take me seriously. The people who report to me aren't going to take me seriously. I have to somehow have an edge and a notch above them. They have the experience, but maybe I can prove that I'm qualified and I'm smart. And so that's what really made me embark on the doctoral program. Now, having done the doctoral program, I'm actually glad I did it, because I did a doctor of management, and so it exposed me to a lot of research and a lot of studies and a lot of theories around leadership, and it helped to allay my concerns about whether I could or would be a good leader. I'll explain what I mean by that. A lot of the leadership styles that I saw around me seemed to be leaning towards a more autocratic style, one that inspired fear, one that, where seniority
hierarchical.
Else,
Mm-hmm.
right? Very hierarchical.
Yes.
But when I started the doctoral program and I came upon theories that spoke about charismatic leadership and servant leadership and transformational leadership, it resonated with me. It was authentic to who I am. I didn't need to change who Karrian was to be a leader. I didn't need a big stick over my team to be a leader. And so that really helped to mold me and give me the kind of confidence I needed to be the leader I wanted to be.
And I think, it's really funny. I think when we look at sort of the leadership and the way that it's taught, women not only lead in different ways, but are required to lead in different ways because we're expected to be different. And so whereas men can be more autocratic, women have to be more caring and we have to be liked in order for our leadership to be recognized and for people to accept us as leaders, because we're not necessarily the mold of leaders that people are used to, especially when you're thinking about leading a big media group or leading a large financial institution. I remember I met you back in those days at Daring, Bunting and Golding. And at the time, I thought you just looked young. And I realized you actually were really young, but you were incredibly competent and everyone knew it. And I think that's why you've been able to achieve the career milestones that you've had. So I love that Peter encouraged you. What did your parents think you'd become?
So my parents really struggled with me. So in high school, in third form, even though I had passed for a prestigious high school, Campion College, I just felt school wasn't for me. I think.
And now here you are with a PhD.
I know. So I mean, I think some of the pressures that was happening in the background, with my family and with my parents, separating. I think a lot of that was playing on me, and I just couldn't focus in school. I've self-diagnosed myself as having an attention deficit or something. So I asked my mom if I could drop out and go and learn some like technical or vocational skill, but because my mother and my father had been deprived of the opportunity to get formal education, they insisted that I get formal education, and then I could do whatever I wanted. So that's why I endured high school. And similarly, in university, I wanted to drop out. Every year I had the same conversation with my mother, and she's like, "Are you crazy?" So I persisted again to please her. And when I finished the first degree, as I mentioned to you, when I got into the world of work and I realized how competitive it was, I went back to school to give myself an edge. So it's not because I liked school, but I felt like it was a means to an end. So that's why I continued to pursue education.
And I think that that's a really viable and necessary path for many, many women. But also, I think there are paths outside of that for some women as well. So it isn't necessarily that if you aren't educated or if you haven't been educated, leadership is not an opportunity for you. But it certainly does give you an edge. I remember my aunt telling me, she says, listen, whether you do it or you don't do it, the time will pass, so you might as well have something to show for the time that you spent. And that was probably the best advice that I've ever been given, because, if not for that advice, I wouldn't have gone on to grad school after undergrad, and many of the opportunities that presented themselves to me wouldn't have been the case. Mm-hmm. So what's the best advice that you've received?
Other than the advice that my parents gave me about sticking to school and getting an education, and to your point, Racquel, you're right. I think even if I didn't get formal education, I would have figured out a lot of what I know now intuitively. But I do think that having that certification or qualification on paper does open doors. It makes it a little bit easier. It confirms to people that there's something up here. So I think that was great advice on their part. And I remember my old boss, Peter Bunting, one day saying to me after I had won some award at DBNG, and I was quite elated. He said to me, "Karrian, remember, you're as good as your last deal." Like that totally deflated the enthusiasm I felt. But that has proven true in the sense that I realized when you get a promotion or you get a new job, that getting it is one thing, but keeping it is another thing.
Keeping it, oh my goodness, huge. That is phenomenal advice.
Correct. So you're constantly proving yourself and proving your worth and proving that you deserve to keep that position that you just got. So I think that was incredible advice, a good reality check.
Yeah, absolutely. Because sometimes, you rush in, and this is anybody, you rush into a new role and you're like, I've made it. And then you realize, wait, the work that it takes to get a job is only part of the work that it takes to keep the job and to do the work and to continue to excel in that role. So how do you, when you start a new role, how do you prepare yourself for success? How do you ensure that, okay, now that I'm here, I'm going to use this opportunity to the best of my ability. I'm going to do really well in this new role. How do you prepare yourself?
Okay, so I would do as much research as possible about the organization. I would speak to peers, people in a similar industry that might be facing similar challenges or, going through a similar experience. Obviously, nothing beats being in the company and experiencing everything firsthand, right? But I think the research certainly helps to prepare you and sets the stage, and gives you some kind of idea going into the role. Ideally, whenever I start a new role, I don't go in with the intention to make changes from day one. I give myself usually a 90-day period where I'm observing. I try to, I would say, almost like an ethnographic study. Or grounded research where I try to submerge myself, where I'm in the mechanics of it. I'm on the floor. I'm rolling sleeves up. I want to know everything. I want to understand everything firsthand before I make any decisions. Because the fact that the company is still around and standing, it means that they're great.
They're doing something right.
They're still doing something right. Yes, but that doesn't mean that there isn't need for an improvement,
opportunity, exactly,
or change, or a transformation, or new ideas. But I want to understand what's going right and what's not going so right. So some people to me, but if they're going through severe challenges and decisions need to be made immediately, won't you do it? I tell people I rather measure twice and cut once. I don't want to go in, make changes, shake things up, and then realize that I've made a mistake. So
how did you learn that? How did you learn that? I know that I have made several mistakes in coming in too excited and making changes too quickly. How did you learn measure twice and cut once?
So some of it was by experience and some of it was from reading. There is a book that speaks about the first 90 days of leadership. I actually think that's what it's called. But also I realize, just from a human to human perspective, when I put myself in the people that I'm going in to lead, when I put myself in their shoes, I wouldn't want somebody coming in, pontificating and know it all, not recognizing that I am a subject matter expert in my own right. I have institutional knowledge that is critical, and I want to be heard. I want to be valued. So I put myself in the shoes of the people that I'm going to lead, and I ideally let them know that we're in this together. If we can somehow make what you have done even better, so not that what you're doing isn't good, but if we can always improve things, that this creates a win-win scenario for both of us. So that's the mindset I put on when I go into an organization, or when I go to lead a new team.
Yeah, and it could be that part of the problem of the organization is that they've not been listening to the people who are actually doing the work. So it could be that just being there to listen and to understand, listen, this is the lived experience of the people who are on the front lines, understanding that and using that knowledge to the best of the organization. I think one of the other things that I've learned along the long journey of leadership is that there are times when organizations focus so much on the things that they need to change, they don't focus on the things that need to stay the same. The what I call the secret sauce of the organization. And if you're too busy chasing down the things that need to change and not the things that absolutely give you competitive advantage that you need to keep, you can lose some of that special things. And when you're not focused on it, your competitors know what it is, why it is you are in the position that you're in. And so if you lose sight of it, you can lose everything. So I think that's a phenomenal way. So is that the first 90 Days of Leadership your favorite book about leadership?
That is one of my favorite books. My other favorite book, this applies to all areas of my life, is a book called Boundaries. So
write that down.
Yes, so boundaries: when to say yes, how to say no, to take control of your life. And this is by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend. So,
well, I hope you're working on your book, because we definitely need more books written by women. So I want, just so you know, that at the book signing, I will be first in line. I don't even care what the book is called. When you write it, I want to be at the first book signing.
Well, you're right. Actually, let me knock on wood. I should have my first book published this month.
Nice. Well, I definitely need to talk to you about that. So when you're having the first signing, please, I want my first copy signed. Excellent.
Yes.
All right. So you talked about being an empathetic leader, a listening leader, authentic to who you are leader. How else would you describe yourself as a leader?
So I'm very people focused. There was a point when I thought that being such a nurturing and caring leader was actually a weakness. So, for example, early in my career, I would struggle with, having to reprimand or correct, or worse yet, dismiss somebody.
Right.
So that's at the heart of who I am. But I've learned to leverage those things in a way that is useful not only to me, but to my employer, my direct report. So, for example, let's use the toughest scenario, which is if I have to dismiss somebody. Usually, you see the red flags. The person isn't performing, or they're not a good fit, and so I realized that employing or using the relationship approach helps both the person and helps me. So we start the conversations at the first sign of the problem, right? In a very humane way. I'm not doing it to belittle you. I'm not doing it to hurt you. It's just pointing out facts like, okay, do you
Yeah.
see this is happening? Is there something that I could be doing? Do you need training? Is it the tools? Like, what is it? Is there something happening at home? Is so a very exploratory, relationship-based conversation. And depending on how the conversations evolve, if it's something that I need to be doing, I do it. If it's something they need to be doing, we put timelines around it. And we would agree that at the end of a particular period that we would need to make a decision. So as I said, initially, that I thought was, oh gosh, that's the worst thing. That these are the worst qualities a firm leader, could possess. But I actually found that it's been, it's actually a great quality. So I have, employees who I've had to dismiss, and we're still friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
And I
know?
think if one of my best friends is somebody that I dismissed some 20 years ago. But I think if you do it right, and for me, I feel like everybody is phenomenal at something. And if somebody's not performing very well, they are as uncomfortable as the organization is with their performance. And it is, your role as a leader is to open that door to allow them to embrace the new opportunity that is waiting for them. That's a right fit. And the two of you just fighting up in this one situation, square peg round hole is not going to make it. And I think there are very, very few instances where it's genuinely a bad person. Everybody's good at something and they have to find it. And the sooner they figure out that this isn't it, I think it opens a door. So unfortunately for me, I've never really had a hard time letting people go, because I definitely believe that all of the people that I've worked with have been incredibly talented and dedicated and wonderful people. They just need to find the right role.
Exactly. And as you said, Racquel, I don't think most people get up thinking, let me see how I can fail at work today.
Exactly. No. No, and you may not even like the job. Some people, they know they don't want to be there and they just trudge along because they're so afraid of the alternative. But you have to
Mhm.
face your fears. And the few times that I've been dismissed, it's always been, listen, I knew I needed to leave, but I wasn't ready to leave. And so you need to be kicked out of the nest. And it's a
Yes,
decision that you knew you should have taken for yourself that had
true,
to find you. Yeah.
true, 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 true.
So there it goes. Well, I could talk to you absolutely all day, and I have 1,000 more questions for you. But before I miss the opportunity to ask you, um, what I think is the most important thing, and what this is about for me, I think that we have an opportunity in the region to transform this region. I think we are on the verge of incredible potential that in many instances is either unrealized or not fully realized. I think that we have the ability to transform this world if we have, again, more authentic leadership, more diversity in our leadership, and we are paying attention to the kinds of decisions that we need to make to live in harmony with our neighbors and with the planet. And so my passion, my legacy has to be that I was part of a transformation that took place. And so we all have the ability to transform this world through leadership. And I'd want you to tell me about one of what I know are many, many examples of your transformation journey, creating transformation through your leadership.
Okay, all right. Wow, I'll have to dig deep for that one. So a couple of things, Racquel. So you spoke about, wanting to inspire women to lead. And I would say that unfortunately, I think the way that many Caribbean girls are socialized, um, we're not socialized to consider leadership, um, or to focus on aspiring towards leadership. So I think that's the first thing. Um, Somehow it's ingrained that males are natural leadership. I'm sure the Caribbean isn't the only place that's guilty of that. So that's the first thing. So, you'll find a young lady enters the world of work and she's quite comfortable with being a worker bee, not necessarily a leader. And then the other thing that research shows is that when leadership opportunities come up, that even if a woman is 80% qualified for the role, for the lack The 20% that she's lacking, she
Yeah.
won't apply.
Yeah. And whereas a man would be at 20% and he'd apply.
Correct. The other thing is that they show that most women become comfortable with the idea of leadership post 40. So it takes us all of 40 years to find ourselves and realize that, hold on, I'm just as competent. I could do this,
Yes.
And then even when a woman gets to 40, depending on what her life circumstances are, whether she's married, has children, that adds a layer of complexity that makes her wonder if she can manage, she can juggle, if she wants to take that on. So I say all of that to say there are a number of competing forces that almost kind of shackle and hold back a woman from she's a girl to she's a young woman, and even as she's a mature woman. So I the reason why I mentioned that is because being in a senior executive role as a female, as a wife, as a mother, I get asked the question all the time by young women, like, how do you do it? How did you do it? And I feel like it's my responsibility to share with them that I had the same timidity that you had. I had the same concerns, the same fears, the lack of self-confidence, the self-talk, even while I am in the position, even though I've made it into senior leadership, there are days when I still feel less than, or still feel like I'm not good enough, like
imposter syndrome. Yeah.
Correct. So I want to tell them, despite the facade, not facade, but yes, I exude confidence and so on, but the self-talk still happens, so I don't want them to think that, oh, she is lucky, she has it all together. I want to remind them that I'm human, and I'm just like you. And in the same way that I've managed to waddle through my fears and insecurities and made it into a leadership position, they can too. I tell them, do it afraid. You won't be ready, you won't know everything, but still raise your hand. Or better yet, when you are nominated, don't decline, try.
Yes.
Your daughters want more role models, more examples, of a female leader. And so I think throughout my career, that's probably one of the most transformative things that I think I do throughout my career, separate and apart from obviously, business accolades. Oh, I grew my company by X% and sales, did this, and or funds under management and so on. But I actually think a lot of the transformation, well, certainly that is important to me, is transforming the mindset of the women that I interact with, and the women that see me, and the women that I work with. So that's the transformation that I would speak about, Racquel, even more than the usual business and leadership examples of performance.
I loved and what I expected that you were gonna say, and this is why this is such a great conversation for me, because I'm learning. But I thought you were gonna talk about the Youpreneur series, which I thought was just absolutely such a breath of fresh air, such a bold move for you, UTC, and talking to all of these young entrepreneurs. But I realized that you're right. It is about telling people, listen, I am in the same shoes. I am also afraid. I lack confidence at times. I don't always believe that, I have it all together, and I still do it because I realize, not only for myself, but for you and for everybody else, that it's so necessary. A couple years ago, I was head of Microsoft for Trinidad and Tobago. And after I left, I had to come back and talk to some young women. And it was one of the hardest talks that I'd ever had to give, because I'm looking at these girls who are tech phenomenons. They're 14 and 15, and they're really excited about, the world and the things that they can do. And I had to say, we failed you. When I was your age, I thought that by the time that I was my age, we would have solved this gender equity thing. And you would be entering into a world of work where you have equal opportunities. And right now, what I've realized is it's not going to happen organically. it is going to happen with women like you showing up and bearing yourself and saying, I don't have it all figured out, but I know that I'm phenomenal. I know that I'm good. And I know that you're good as well. And I know that you have the capacity and you bring something different and unique and authentically you that is necessary for us to grow and to learn and to develop. So I thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And anytime you want to have another chat, I am ready and excited. And please don't forget me on the invite to the book signing. I want to buy the first one.
No problem, Racquel. My question is, who's going to interview you? I know you say I've done so many of these, but your story is pretty phenomenal too. So we might have to switch roles.
I would happily subject myself to my own questions and have that conversation, because I think these are conversations worth having. I think, we need to figure this out. And I've been so fortunate to meet so many incredible people like you. And we need to have these conversations, and we need to have these conversations in a public domain so that people have the ability to understand the journey and get more information and build themselves up and realize that they have something important to share.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
You're most welcome. Bye.
Bye.